Here we are. We're cooking into our headliner, brought to you by Bruno's Pizza. $15.99 any large. Order yours today at Bruno'sND.com. Jared, our headliner today. This is your great get.
That's another get for me.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, you're 2 for 2, man.
I know.
If it was baseball, you're killing it.
I know. I'm hitting up the ASU roots, the Tempe roots. It's good.
We have an Arizona State football insider with us. He hosts the most popular podcast, Speak of the Devils, where you can get all your ASU football information and everything and all your updates on the daily right there. Speak of the Devils. We have him, Mr. Joe Healey. Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Gentlemen, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, we're taking away from your election viewing right now, I suppose.
Yeah, as fun as exciting as that would be, I think I'd rather talk about country music and college football.
Right? I think I'd like to talk about any ASU football right now. So a couple weeks ago, we were talking about live venues opening, and we talked about the Ryman. We talked about Billy Bob's, Canes, and some of those things. And in that podcast, we talked about Shane Smith and the Saints playing at Billy Bob's. And lo and behold, 2 days later, I'm checking my Facebook feed, and there's Joe flying out to Texas to go see Shane Smith and the Saints at Billy Bob's. And I'm immediately texted you. It's like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. I'm like, hey, we got to get this guy on.
I was like, get him.
So
Call him now.
I reached out to him, and he immediately popped on and said, yeah, I'll do it anytime. So I really appreciate that, because we love talking about people going out and seeing live music. And
Billy Bob's. Joe, tell us, how was that? How was the show at Billy Bob's?
Man, it was awesome. I mean, just to get back to seeing live music, and I mean, I know everybody's kind of racking their brains on the last time they went to a concert. For me, it was actually at Billy Bob's. I saw Whiskey Myers there.
I'm a huge fan of Whiskey Myers.
They're killer.
We're going next time,
right?
Yeah.
So I saw them. It was a little bit before. It was like a week or two before. It was early February. Okay. So it'd been a while, but that was kind of not too far long before the lockdown. A lot of people have been going, better part of a year. So just to see music, let alone at one of the best venues that you can be at for country music, and for the people that were there in the band, I mean, you could tell Shane Smith and the Saints, I mean, they absolutely put everything they have into it. It's the first time I've seen them. I've heard nothing but good things, so it might be just kind of how they operate.
Right.
Man, it was spectacular. You can even see the things they're posting on social media afterward about how much it meant to them. I'd seen they'd done a few shows beforehand, but it's hard to compare to Billy Bob's. So the concert was incredible. The setup was great. All things considered, it was safe, and you had the distance, and you had all that kind of thing. So it wasn't something that I think anybody who attended or who might have been skeptical of whether or not it should have been held, if it was going to be a safe environment or not, it was. So all things considered, it was awesome.
So you went to Billy Bob's pre-COVID and post-COVID. What was the biggest difference?
I would say the biggest difference I'd say the biggest difference for me happened to be just with really the seats that I had and the experience that I personally had. So with Whiskey Myers, we just had general admission, right. And that was the first time I'd been to Billy Bob's, and I'm like, okay, GA is going to be fine. You go to concerts GA all the time. I didn't realize how big Billy Bob's is. So even being GA.
What's it like? I've never been or seen it.
I mean, it's just a massive, massive venue to where, at least where me and my friends were hanging out, we could hear the music fine, but we could barely even see the stage.
Right.
And obviously we probably could have found a better spot, but that's just kind of a signal of how huge it is for Shane Smith, because we had tickets that had rolled over from one, because this was rescheduled. This was the third of 3 attempts to schedule.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was supposed to be in April, and then in June, and then to October.
And you just let them ride the whole time.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah.
You like
they're
those
cheap tickets. It's like $25 ticket. And I'll get out to Texas at any time I can. So it's an easy spur of the moment thing. But we basically had front row seats, and they set it up with kind of like small banquet tables where they had people sitting down at tables, maybe 8 people per table just lined up near the stage. And it was cool. So that made it kind of pretty spaced out. I think people just knew how to act, at this point. And to be able to go to a concert, it's kind of like, you're like out on parole or something like that. Like,
don't screw it up.
Yeah.
I want to do the right thing.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of why I felt.
It felt that way on last Wednesday.
So that was cool. I couldn't really tell too much what was going on in the general area, because it just didn't have to be there. I mean, we had servers coming through. There was a restroom real near me. So I just didn't have to, migrate around too much. So in my area, again, to compare it to the pre-COVID, the pre was just people everywhere, and I happen to be in that mass of humanity and general admission. This one, I had better seats, but even still, I couldn't tell you as far as what they did in terms of, limiting capacity. I mean, I know that they did. I just didn't know to what degree. So I'm sure that was a factor as well. And we just wanted to get there. So we got there early, we're excited. So we're in the door as soon as we possibly can, all that stuff that, again, pre-COVID, you just kind of stroll in before the show and have a good time.
Right.
For all of our listeners out there and all of our YouTube watchers, Billy Bob's is the world's largest honky tonk.
Okay.
At max capacity, it's right around 6,000.
Right.
So it is a huge venue. And if you haven't been there, you got to check it out.
We'll have to do that sometime.
Yes. Restaurant and they do rodeo, and it's a tourist attraction. So it was a cool thing to get to go to.
All right. So let's talk ASU football. Obviously, you can tell by his screen that he is a big ASU football fan.
And it is a big week for Arizona State and the Pac-12.
We're actually going to play. I didn't think this day would come.
Yeah. Thank goodness for the Big Ten getting started with football, because that's really what got the Pac-12 to get on board, because they were the last ones to jump back in.
You cannot play now, right?
Were you worried they weren't going to? I kind of was. I was like, oh, they're going to screw it up.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, with the leadership of the conference, sometimes you just never know what's going on. So, yeah, this was a day that after it got canceled, you really wonder if it would happen or if they would try something in the spring, which would have just been a horrible idea.
Right.
It would have been maybe the safer idea, but just logistically a nightmare. But, yeah, I honestly didn't think we'd get here, but we are.
Especially when you consider the other conferences have all played as many games as ASU is going to play. So
like we were talking, pre-show here, like you said, like it's very tight margin, and you can't mess it up because there's only so many games left because they're so late to the party, right?
Yeah, I mean, if for teams that are, I don't think the Pac-12 has a snowball's chance of getting the college football playoff, even if a team like Oregon went undefeated and won every game 70-0.
Right.
But if you have between, player issues like what we're seeing with, Trevor Lawrence and others to where, okay, yeah, they got to miss games, but it's not completely derailing their season. Or if that were to do things like what's happening with Wisconsin's kind of getting derailed because they're that second level of a conference that's playing the fewest games. So
there's no built-in bias for us. We're kind of screwed if somebody gets
where
sick.
It ends is right up. There's still a lot of bowl games that are being played, not all of them. There's still that, attempted a college football playoff. So they basically have a hard stop there in December.
Right.
And you just have to figure the way things are going, whether it's within college football and just across the nation. Can you, with complete confidence, say that they're going to get through 7 games for 12 teams without any sort of speed bumps when it comes to, the impact of COVID? It's tough to have a lot of confidence in that.
Yeah, they needed to have some built-in downtime, I suppose.
Or you have to have that bubble so tight, right? And so tight and so limited, which, everybody's been talking about this since, for the last couple of months. It's hard to control those 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds.
They're going to want to have a good time.
Of course.
I went to ASU. It took me 6 years. It was, an overly good time at ASU.
But it dang near everything has to be perfect to make sure you run through that whole schedule. And you're right. I mean, if they run the table, do you think they might still? I know you said there might not. There's a snowball's chance, but do you think there could be for that Oregon team or any team that goes undefeated? I mean, do you really think they wouldn't give them a shot?
So I think it's got to be one of those upper tier teams. Like it's got to be an Oregon or a USC. I think that if it was a Cinderella thing, sadly, even if it was like an ASU, that would hurt because the preseason expectation isn't that high.
Right.
You're going to need some chaos going on across the nation, which we're kind of seeing. You saw Oklahoma State drop one. If Clemson perhaps loses to Notre Dame and then those teams get a little jumbled up there, you could have there's a trail that's getting there. I just think that if you have my thought process has been that the committee would take like a one-loss. So let's say that if Notre Dame beats Clemson and then Clemson beats Notre Dame in the ACC championship game, that they'll take like those teams or either those teams over a 7-0 Pac-12.
Right. Or they may take a Cincinnati that runs the table and has been playing the whole time, right? Cincinnati's hot right now.
Yeah.
And they're playing really good football. They are, and the defense is dominating.
And I think that the committee may have, I think the, East Coast bias or bias against the Pac-12 from whatever region of the country it is a generally real thing. And part of it is deservedly so. And that can be a thing that influences it as well. They just might be slightly biased against it to where they're going to look for any reason not to include a Pac-12.
Well, makes sense.
Yeah, totally. In some of these games now, we're seeing 20-some thousand people at these stadiums now that they've been playing for a while, right?
It's bizarre. Some of these are stadiums you see 20, some you see none, or you see the cutouts, and it's just...
Which I'm all about the 20-some thousand, or how many you can get in there, or how many you want to get in there. But the Pac-12, right, fellas,
no fans,
is
right?
Not happening, right? 0 fans in any stadiums. Is that correct?
I think they kind of left the door open a little bit because, the initial announcement was like a firm. There's not going to be anybody, but I think they kind of stepped back on that a little bit under the radar. Like that hasn't been highly publicized, but people in the know are saying, they might reevaluate things down the stretch.
Really?
It's certainly not going to happen in the early, this first week, we're not going to see anybody in the stands. But, if we're here at the end of the year, Ace is playing in Tucson near the end. Could there be some folks there? Maybe. I don't know that it would certainly surprise me, especially just the way that the leadership in the conference is going to have anything significant. I mean, maybe a 10%.
Right.
Type of thing.
Right.
They've backpedaled on everything they've done this year, so they might as well allow some fans in, I suppose.
Are there any players on ASU that you can't wait to see perform? Because it's been a while, right? And spring, no, and then now is the latest ones to the game. Which one? Is there a couple players, their offense, defense? You're like, man, I can't wait to see these guys play on this Saturday.
Yeah, ASU is really going to have to count on some really young offensive skill players. But they're dang good ones. You've got a junior college transfer running back, Rashad White. Chip Trainham is a 4-star running back. Daniel Nagata is another 4-star running back. They're loaded there. LV Bunkley Shelton is just like a small wide receiver that everybody is raving about. Johnny Wilson is the opposite of him. He's 6'7" at wide receiver that people are high on as well. Those guys could all be either starting or in the heavy rotation. So that they're going to rely on them, but the instant opinions so far are pretty high. They're very highly rated recruits. Obviously, you want to see what Jaden Daniels can do in year 2.
Has he put on any weight?
Yeah, he's up to. I mean, it's funny because I think if they were to have listed him more honestly what he weighed last year, it would make the game look more impressive.
I did see the depth chart. That just came out. So I don't.
Yeah, I don't know what they have listed at. People have been talking about 185, but he was in like the 160s last year.
Wow.
It was. He just looked like a kid. He was
probably listed as 175. I don't think he was listed anywhere in the 160s last year, even though he was. So.
Soaking wet with his gear on, right?
It was amazing.
So, I remember watching it.
It was funny because we had, I guess, the Sun Angel Foundation equivalent on the week that NDSU played their one game, and we were talking about Trey Lance.
Yep.
And Luke's like, he's great. You don't have a quarterback as good. And then he
he's like the number 3 quarterback in the country.
And I'm like, I think our quarterback's pretty good. I think he's going to do all right when he finally gets drafted. When it comes time. And then you went back and you're like, yeah, you're right. He is pretty good.
Well, let's just talk about. We won't get into that quite yet. Trey Lance is 6'3", about 235.
He's a dude. Our kid's a kid. Like literally started at 165 running around.
But literally, Trey Lance is only a redshirt sophomore.
That's true.
So he's just a kid as well.
He's just a kid. Can you imagine getting drafted that high as a kid?
No, it'd be awesome.
Right?
What is the prediction for Saturday?
Yeah, what do you think?
Against the USC Trojans at USC. The Sun Devils are rolling into town.
Does it matter that it's at USC? There's no one there, so.
Right.
Glorified scrimmage.
Right.
Honestly, as a mild side note, that's what I was wondering because you've got a guy, like Jack Jones, starting quarterback for ASU, was a 2-year starter for USC before he went to the JUCO level.
Right.
Chris Hawkins, ASU's defensive backs coach, super young guy. He was a senior at USC in 2017, and now he's an assistant coach on the staff. So, there's a lot of storylines that if the Coliseum were filled, that it would really play out pretty interestingly. And of course, ASU recruits Southern California very heavily. That's the focal point. But if people aren't there, is that going to affect what they have on the field? I don't know. I had Jordan Simone on my podcast, former safety for ASU, and he said that when they're on the field, that it doesn't matter. So maybe it's not a fact.
I don't know. The first time I went to the Coliseum was back when NCAA football was on the Xbox, And they would, they would get rattled when the crowd would get going out there. And I walked out there and I'm like, holy crap. I understand what getting rattled means. Cause it's like that fight song over and over again. The crowd's going nuts. It's like a miniature earthquake there. And now we're just taking all of that out and we're just getting to basics football. So I don't know.
Home field advantage.
9 a.m. start. What the heck, man?
Yeah, that's that's something that obviously for TV, try to get some kind of exposure for the conference. I know that Herm Edwards has, been emphatic about the schedules that they maintain. That's not too far out of the ordinary. You know what I mean? So it's not taking them out of their comfort zone too much. I think that's something that would be a bigger deal, itself included, for fans. If there were a 9 a.m. kickoff to go to, that would be a pretty brutal situation where you just stay up all Friday night and don't even risk sleeping in.
What's California on right now? Is that 8 there? Or will that be?
So it's a 10 a.m. start in Arizona. Time change was just Sunday.
Oh, I'm gonna have to hit my friend. All right, 10 a.m. is better.
Yeah, so it's a 9 a.m. in LA, 10 a.m. So we get a nice here in Tempe.
That's not bad. 10 a.m. I can do that.
That's good. The difference 9 and 10 on a Saturday, that could be pretty significant.
I can roll out of bed, roll down to the cigar shop, and turn on the TV and watch some ASU football.
So score prediction.
Yeah,
I was going to think of that because we're recording our podcast tomorrow night. It's tough for me to confidently go with an ASU win just because USC's offense is something special, and I think ASU, they're going to have to win a shootout to do that, and they might have the weapons over the course of the season and certainly ultimately as these guys progress in their career. But for game one, when you have all those newcomers that I mentioned, it's going to be tough to do when you have Keaton Slovis and all his receivers. So let's see. I was thinking of one because I was imagining you probably would have asked. So I'm going to say 35-27 USC. I'll say ASU covers because that spread's a little heavy.
It's like 10, right?
Or 10 to 11, something like that. That's a little much. ASU tends to play pretty close games under Herm Edwards for the most part.
Right.
Even in losses, they're pretty competitive. So, I'd say, technically a one-score game, about 35-27.
Jared, what do you got? Prediction?
I don't know. I can't even. I think ASU's going to win. Now, here's what I wonder, Joe. Have we had more chances to practice or better practices because they're in California and we're here?
I think so, though I also saw, some reporting on Devil's Digest, the website that I contribute to that note, and it was something that, and it could be, under Trojan-colored glasses, but the beat writer for USC acknowledged it, but didn't make it seem like it was that big of a deal. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but I just don't get the impression that it's something that is, dozens of practice days or things like that.
We are good at getting coaches fired from USC. So, if we come out and win right away, then we can work on getting Helton fired. And I know at least one of my big friends who's a big USC fan. His dad played there, would love it. And he just hates Helton with passion.
Yeah, I'm curious to see.
What do you think?
It's in the whole hot seat thing, if coaches are going to get fired this year, if everybody gets kind of a gimme.
I think it is a gimme. It's a get out of jail free card this year.
Right.
But I do think this. I think it's going to be very close.
Right.
I think it's going to be sloppy football because it's both their first games out of this whole mess. Because originally all these teams that first played, they were all sloppy. What was it? Navy that couldn't tackle anybody the first game. I remember seeing those highlights.
There's no NAU to beat up on the first game.
So I'm going to go ASU win 14-17.
14-17. Oh.
Low scoring, lots of turnovers probably. Can't score, and then kick a field goal at the end. ASU wins.
ASU 28. USC 21, and I'm going to sit there with my heart pounding away. Now, it'll probably turn out to be USC 28 and ASU 21, and the grand tragedy that is ASU will once again kick me.
You literally just changed your mind in the same sentence.
I did. Well, I'm going to go homer. That's why I don't bet. I don't ever bet ASU. Because
I went with ASU.
So tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, let's hear about it.
I love it because it's like one of the first. It may be the only ASU podcast I actually listen to or know of.
It's one of those things, going back to the origin of it. It's, necessity being the mother of invention. We started it, Brad, Denny, my co-host, and I, we started it in August of 2011. So just gearing up for that 2011 season. We're talking about Dennis Erickson and Vontaze Burfict.
Hey, I like both of those guys. I'm fans of both of those guys.
I remember walking out Erickson's last game saying, I'm not coming back. Like, I'm done.
And here you are.
And here I am still.
You did just say they're going to lose.
I do that. So. No, they're going to win. I count it here, so.
what helped us, get a decent fan base was obviously there was a coaching change that year, and people were, starved for information. And that time was kind of the infancy of Twitter, like its first few years that people were really using it. You know what I mean? So any kind of information folks were digging into. So, people just kind of grabbed on and stayed involved with it. And then Todd Graham had a decent run, of course, especially his first 3 years. So there was some success people were following. So by the time we kind of, got our feet wet and figured out what we were doing, ASU was having some pretty good seasons and some really memorable moments. So folks were looking for everything they could get. And like you mentioned, it's something that's not really out there. Frankly, the talk radio around here is
not great.
Only going to give ASU attention if they are, a nationally elite team or making news for anything good or bad.
If I want my ASU news, I'm listening to Joe and Brad. I remember sitting around with Jared Brandt and Brad when you guys were just getting ready to start the podcast. We were smoking cigars and they were talking about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm totally in. I need that ASU extra information because you don't get it when you're listening to talk radio here.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because Brad and I were in the same fraternity at ASU, but neither of us really spent a ton of time in it. We're a little bit different in age. So I look back at these pictures, I'm like, holy crap, like I didn't even really know it until I thought back on it. But it's funny that we've been, kind of paired together through the show for nearly a decade now. But
it's crazy because we were looking at episode 262 is your latest one. We're like at 12. We're like, okay,
13
today, 13. We're happy.
Yeah.
How can our listeners find your podcast and anywhere else that they can find your information?
Yeah, so the podcast, like you said, Speak of the Devils, we're on just about every platform now. We ditched our song of the week so that we can be on Spotify. I realized that was the thing that held us back, is we always picked a regular song of the week, and that was the deal breaker. So we changed that. Virtually anywhere podcasts are available, Speak of the Devils. We're on Facebook, Speak of the Devils. We're SOTD Podcast on Twitter, pretty active there. Our Twitter and Facebook, as far as social media, are the biggest platforms that we keep up with. We have a lot of fun with. We try to be very engaging and that sort of thing, especially on Twitter. So no shortage of ways to catch us.
Have you thought about what our record's going to be this year?
So we did a round table deal last week. And we basically just went on, I think, the first 6 games.
Right.
Whatever it was, I picked 2 losses.
Okay.
I picked the loss to USC, and I just picked the, sinking my teeth into one inexplicable loss.
ASU loss, right?
Now makes no sense. And I just kind of arbitrarily picked Colorado, not necessarily because of them, but it's a road game, and it's a little later in the year, and the weather's probably going to be pretty rough with this schedule, and that usually doesn't treat ASU too well. So I kind of just threw that against the wall and it stuck. But
and then that 7th game's weird, right? Because 1 plays 2, 3 plays 4, and whatever.
Yeah, it'll be obviously a North opponent, and it'll be the mirror image ranking of wherever we are. So, of course, ASU only plays Cal from the North right now, but it could be a rematch. I mean, that's how they're picked. I believe in the media poll was ASU second and Cal second in the South and North. So it could be a rematch. Obviously it could be anybody else there.
All right. So, Luke, we're going to talk about India.
We have one last question for you. As we were talking earlier, pre-show, you know that I played at North Dakota State.
Yep.
So North Dakota State rolls down into Tempe, plays the Sun Devils. Who wins?
Oh man, I mean you got to take ASU at home.
Right.
Wait. Let me stop you there. Trey Lance is playing. I know he's not going to play anymore. That's over. He's going to get drafted.
Right, this is the one
He'll
game
get drafted number 1.
They're coming out to play. I think
not Trevor Lawrence. Sorry, Trey Lance. He's probably drafted in the top 10.
Right.
So what do you think, Joe? What do you think?
ASU wins 49-48.
That's nice.
Cocky,
you'll take that, won't you?
Go for 2 after a touchdown to win the game, and they don't convert the 2-point conversion.
Nice. I'll take. Hey,
it's the entry that they need to the FBS.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call our AD at North Dakota State. If you can get a hold of your AD, let's try to make this happen. And probably won't be until 2026, 2027,
2035
when the schedules open up again.
Right, yeah.
I think we need to make this happen.
Do you think they'd ever actually play, Joe? Or do you think we're a little?
I don't believe that they have. I'm fairly confident.
They've never played.
Right? No. I wonder if they would. Or is NDSU just too good of a small program?
Oh, for ASU to play them?
Yeah. Well, Oregon's played them.
Oregon, they were scheduled to play Oregon this season.
Yeah.
On the opener.
They could have had a shot there.
I think Oregon just uses COVID as an excuse
to get out there.
There you go.
That's a joke, people. That's a joke.
So I'm going to ask Luke's question. If you could do anything right now in the world, minus no COVID, what would you be doing?
Oh my goodness. Okay. It would have to be getting ready to go see an ASU game in person. So let's say the schedule were different and they were, hosting somebody, that would really be it, because it's going to be very weird this Saturday,
right?
But it's going to be really weird
when they're at home
next Saturday when they're playing in Tempe, and that'll be the first.
Can I just go tailgate?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I know that ASU is certainly not going to encourage it. I don't know if it's something that is it like drinking in a parking lot on a Saturday afternoon to where it's like, dude, that's illegal.
Right. Has to be. Well, there's a game day going on. I don't know. Have to look in the laws.
No, that's a heck of a question.
I don't know. I've just been looking at all my Facebook memories right now, and it's all tailgating ASU football. Instead, it's just me sitting at home watching The Mandalorian, which is not bad.
If I'll throw in a non-sports one or a non-concert one, since I already did that. So me and my buddies went to the Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios in Hollywood last year, because ASU played at UCLA last year right around Halloween. So we just did a double shot, and that thing was awesome. I mean, it was one of those deals that I thought I was going to have a good time, but it was just a really, really cool experience. Obviously, they canceled that this year. And me and my buddies, obviously Halloween last week, we were kind of grinding our gears about missing that this year. So if I had to throw in kind of a wild card thing that I'd also be doing or will have, wish I could have done, that goes up there too.
That's cool.
All right, Joe, you were great.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Everybody who's listening, check out any ASU football information that you need. Head over to Speak of the Devils, from their podcast to their Facebook page to their Twitter. Mr. Joe Healey, thank you so much. We appreciate you so much. And you know what? We'd love to probably have you on later on.
Yeah, if you want to come in, you come into our little studio.
Guys.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
Go Devils. Know the rest, and we are out. Know the rest, and we are